When there's an injustice against you or someone you love or someone you believe in, stand up. Don't sit down on them, if they need you.
Welcome to Popcorn Planet's Pop Culture Justice. I'm Andy Signore. We got an important episode for you today, an update on the Gabby Petito case. Justice for Gabby might actually finally be happening. I'm excited to break down the latest. Yes, Brian Laundries. We're back talking about him. I never thought we would, but we are. And for good reason, because we need to see this justice served. And I'm so happy because we got some wonderful panelists here today. It's Kim's back as usual. Always good to see you, Kim. But look who's here. We got a special guest, legal consultant, lawyer herself, Danny, on direct. Thank you so much for being here, Danny. What an honor. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you so much. It's an absolute privilege, and I'm happy to be here and to add my knowledge to what it is that you guys are seeking, which it sounds like is justice, and that's exactly what we should be up to. So that is awesome.
If you guys aren't familiar with Danny, she's over there on YouTube at Danny on direct. I like the pun; it's clever. And you guys can check it there. I see you've been with DUI Guy and so many others we know. So for those of you fans of Danny, excited to have her here. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. So you've been following this case, the Laundrie case, and you are aware of, you've read the letter, just so we're all up to date. Kim, you as well. We're both all up to date on things?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So for those of you who are not, let's do just a quick recap and then we'll get into it, just so we have a sort of summary of things. Gabby Petito, obviously tragic loss. It was a case we covered. What has it been now? 2 years now? My goodness. In case a lot of you guys found our channel due to our coverage of the Gabby Petito case a while back. And yeah, it was a wild one where YouTubers found her remains. Red, White, and Bethune, shout out to them for just happening to find out where they were. We were all trying to figure out what was going on. Brian Laundrie was then missing. There was a search for every bald man in the world. Everyone thought was Brian Laundrie. Eventually, we did find Brian's remains. Yeah, he had taken his own life, unalived himself with a weapon, went out into the remains here in Florida, and was found later. What was always so weird, though, is that his parents, the Laundries, went out and knew somehow exactly where he was. There was always something about Brian's parents that, as we followed this case in depth, just felt off. They were very off-putting. This was their daughter-in-law is really who this person was. Gabby Petito was living with the Laundries and Brian for a period of time, and just their attitude towards Sid was very off. And when she went missing, they weren't helpful at all. They put out these pleas saying, well, prayers that she may be alive. And as more and more came to, and then we found actually what happened, it seemed as if they knew when Brian came that something had gone off, that yes, Gabby was no longer there. And that's currently what's happening. The Petitos now, all this time later, are suing the Laundries for, Danny, help me out. What is the actual legal term for what they are suing the Laundries for before we even get to the letter?
Well, and that's part of the issue. So this was all brought in at the same time that a motion to dismiss was raised in this case. What they are suing them for is intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, the bar for that claim, in order to receive damages or to recover on that cause of action, is very high. And so I'm not entirely sure, because I haven't read through the second amended complaint. They're now on their second complaint trying to outline the causes of action, but it's pretty clear that they're going for at least intentional infliction of emotional distress, and whether or not they're bringing in negligent emotional distress is another discussion altogether, and whether or not they're bringing any other torts. But at least with the intentional infliction of emotional distress, we're still waiting on the court's ruling. So this letter came into play when they were determining what is going to be introduced at trial and what won't be. We are still in the discovery phases of this case. And Andy, looking at your history, it sounds like you have some familiarity with civil lawsuits. And you are as aware as anyone else that discovery is dirty, it's nasty. Anything that you share privately will be made public, unless there is a absolutely compelling reason not to. In this case, it is the right of the Petito family rather, to raise these claims, these causes of action, and to seek discovery in this case. The Laundrie family tried to block the introduction of this letter and said you should put a protective order on it, right? To keep it from getting out to the public and from keeping it from being introduced at trial. The court did rule on that yesterday. They're, of course, allowing at least the other side to have this and allowing it to be brought in as potential evidence in discovery. So that is where we are at in the case from a legal standpoint.
Yeah, it's interesting because during this, I guess the hearings yesterday, there was a point there where I was listening to the lawyer, Peter Tragos, another friend of our channel, and he got the vibe that the judge was almost willing to let it be put away, but it was almost like the Laundries attorneys were like, well, they've already shared the worst parts of it. We'd rather this whole thing get out there in its context at least, because the worst has been said. At least if we have the context of the letter, maybe we'll have an excuse for why this letter exists. And that becomes now the big question of what on earth could justify such a letter where, yes, guys, in the letter it says, I will help you get a shovel if you need to, what's the word she used? We'll get there in a second. If you need to get rid of a body, I will bring the shovel and garbage bags, is what she says in this letter, which doesn't look good, Danny. We got to be honest here. But her whole argument is, well, it was a love letter I wrote in a funny, weird way, a quirky way that we wrote together. And that's what we're about to break down together. So I want to just give an overall recap for those of you who haven't been following this case. This is like a huge major update because we've heard this letter teased a lot. We've heard about she was going to bring a shovel, and now we have it all in. Anything else to add before we now break down the letter itself, Danny, that you feel like the audience may be missing?
Yeah, I think the key takeaway from this letter and the reason why the Laundrie family wanted to keep this out of discovery is not just because it's terribly incriminating, but also it shows intent. It shows at least knowledge. So she knew something was up. And the reason that's important is because it's not just that they had to intend to cause extreme emotional distress. It's that it was deliberate or reckless. So if she knew, and at the same time that she knew where Gabby's remains were and that Gabby was dead, at the same time, the Laundries were making public statements saying, well, we hope that she's found safe and sound. She had blocked Gabby's mother from Facebook, from her cell phone, from everything. So all of this leads to a reasonable person to conclude that she likely knew that Gabby was dead and likely knew about her whereabouts and her son's involvement. And rather than working with law enforcement, which she's not obligated to do at that time. However, when they made a public statement through their attorney, that is what started this claim for extreme emotional distress and this intentional infliction of emotional distress. And so that is why this letter is so vital to their case. And that's why it had to be let in. That's why the court handed it over, because it's relevant. There's no other reason to keep it out.
Yeah, well said. I'm glad. This is an interesting case. Exactly. We're going to get to the ramifications. I want to get to your thoughts of should this even, we'll get to all that. But now that it's public and it was released pretty quickly, seemingly both sides at this point said, fine, we're getting it out there, because it seems like that's clearly what the Petitos wanted. And the Laundries at this point, attorney was like, well, crap, it's already out there. The wonder is probably worse. Do you agree with that? Do you think there was a point of like the wonder of hearing the quote of the shovel was worse than having it in its context, Danny?
I do. I actually think that once opposing counsel brought it in, once the plaintiff's counsel brought it in by saying, oh, none of these children's books, none of these love letters talk about shovels and trash bags and disposing of bodies, right? The way that he framed that was objectionable, but it already made it very public. And so at that point, you might as well just disclose the entire letter. They should have handed it over during initial disclosures and during the discovery process anyway. Right. So this all should have come in anyway. This is not a criminal trial. This is civil. And like I said before, in civil law, these things come in unless there is a very compelling reason for them not to. One compelling reason would be if it was irrelevant. But again, this goes directly to the heart of the issue.
All right, so let's get to the letter in itself. We've been, a lot of you may have already read it, but I want to read it now with Danny here, with Kim and all you guys, because we're going to talk about it, because it's a weird effing letter, and we're going to talk to her excuses, etc. But here is the letter, which has this, let me go to the close-ups here. Brian Christopher Laundrie, burn after reading is what it says there in the front of the letter. And then there's this other little raven or something that says, remember. And again, really weird right at the gate that it says burn after reading, and it not a good look, quirky or whatever it is. It's very unfortunate for her if she's telling the truth. But here's the letter itself. Now I'm going to show you the letter, but I have a transcribed version, but you guys can look at her handwriting just so you can see it. I know it's hard to read, but I have a version here that is, but here it is. Let's see here. I just want you to know, I just want you to remember, I will always love you. And I know you will always love me. You are my boy. Nothing can make me stop loving you. Nothing can or ever will divide us, no matter what we do or where we go or what we say. We will always love each other. If you're in jail, I will bake a cake and put a file in it. If you need to dispose of a body, I will show up with a shovel and garbage bags. If you fly to the moon, I will be watching the skies for your re-entry. If you say you hate my guts, I'll get new guts. Remember that love is a verb, not a noun. It's not a thing, it's not words, it is actions. Watch people's actions to know if they love you, not their words. Go down to part 2. Therefore, I am certain that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor the ruling spirits, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers from above, nor powers from below, nothing in the entire created world can separate our love. Neither hostile powers, nor messengers, or heaven, nor monarchs of earth. Nothing has the power to separate us. Romans 8:38. Extended version. Nothing can separate us. Hatred, not hunger, not homelessness, not threats, not backstabbing, not even sin, not the unthinkable or thinkable can get between us. Not time, not miles and miles and miles. And there you go, guys. There's the letter in its entirety. It's a weird letter. There's a lot to talk about in this letter. I want to start, though, with the most incriminating part. With this shovel and garbage bags. How can one justify it? Well, let's go to her justification here. Here is the statement that Roberta Laundrie released and now that the letter has been out there. The letter to Brian was written prior to Gabby and Brian leaving my home for their trip. Previously, I submitted an affidavit to the court for very limited purposes, but that is not the whole story. Now that the letter has been shared, I ask that you read it in its entirety and understand that the letter contains phrases besides those highlighted by Pat Riley for sensationalism to bolster his case, Petito's lawyer. I truly loved my son and simply wanted to convey to him how much he meant to me and how much I loved him. I am sure people use phrases all the time to express their loved ones, the depths of their love, although I chose words that I thought would be impactful for Brian, given our relationship. The letter was in no way related to Gabby. Please read the entire letter before you believe the hype put out by Pat Riley. The hype. So strange. Here, one more thing just to sort of show you the defense, because I know a lot of you are already fuming in the comments. I can see it. She claims this was a quirky reference to childhood books they both loved, that she wrote it before he were out there. So that's the whole issue here. The reason he talked about it and burn after reading was a quirky reference to books they loved in an attempt to repair their strained relationship. It had nothing to do with the murder. I'm sorry, this is really weird. Going back to you first, Danny. Do any of these Roberta excuses help in your mind justify this use of I'll help you bury the body with the garbage bags? What are your thoughts when you see that in this letter?
I think it's weird to be saying that to your son, even in the context that she's putting it in, right? So let's say that she did draft this and wrote it to him prior to him and Gabby going out on this trip together. Still weird right off the bat. Second of all, I just noticed, I noticed yesterday when we first saw the letter, it was just the physical copy. Someone had taken pictures, so it was very difficult to read. This is a black and white version. And if you go to the front of the letter, the cover, yep. So on this page, you can see on the original photo, there looks to be what are like water stains in particular areas of the front of the letter, which to me indicates tears. Okay. I'm almost certain. And why would you write burn after reading on the front? I mean, maybe you're a fan of the movie, but I doubt that's the case. And then if you scroll down, you'll notice there's a raven or a crow what are ravens and crows called when they're all together? They're called a murder, right? It's just an odd, this whole letter is very odd. Now, whether she intentionally put a raven or a crow in the front, I don't know, but that's my first time seeing it. So I think that's interesting. And then a lot of times people think they're clever. We had this in the Lori Vallow case where they would try and mask what they're trying to say. They would code their language in a bunch of other stuff. So they would start putting messages in between what else they were saying, right? So, oh, I hope that you don't break your leg today at the performance, right? Little things like that, where in context, it makes it look a lot not quite as bad, but the message is still there. And then another thing to note is, although she's saying this was written prior to what happened with Gabby and Brian, this is an undated letter. And she admits that within her own affidavit. So I don't think, even in full context, this is a good look for them. I've said from the beginning, how they haven't been charged with accessory is beyond me, but I am not a Florida attorney. So I'm not here to say that anything in those regards. But in terms of the civil lawsuit, this is really bad. To me, it's evident again of knowledge and that she had to have known.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not, because it's weird. She's trying to make this justification. I guess to me, the thing that does change it is when it was written, right? But I guess even when he came back, if it was written, there's talk about when this letter came in, and I saw JB at WFLA. I don't know, Steph or Kim or anybody else has confirmed. We're still trying to figure out when this was written. If this letter was written when she was alive, that would change a lot of things, right? Sort of the timing of this could justify her weird excuses, could it not?
I mean, perhaps, but we don't have the timing. All we have is a single affidavit written by her to the court, and that's it. And even that affidavit is so self-serving that it's difficult to get that introduced in court without her actually coming in to testify to these things. I think the best way to find out the truth is to cross-examine her and let her answer the questions we all have, that the parents of Gabby Petito have, and that the court should have. These are all things that need to come to trial. And I'm really glad that the judge made the right ruling yesterday, saying, hey, this is something the jury can decide. This is something the court can decide. Bring it all in and let's look at it in its full context. Bring her in to testify to this and explain it in her own words. And then let's see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I mean, Dirtolino has not helped matters at all, is what's really also fascinating about this whole thing. He's been the lawyer, and now his case didn't get thrown out yet. It's still on the docket. Did you find that out? Because he was trying to throw it out, but he's now on the hook as well, which is another whole interesting legal argument of, can a lawyer be responsible? But that hasn't gone anywhere yet. The judge still hasn't ruled.
That's correct. As far as I know, the court hasn't made a decision in that case. Well, it's the same case. So he's been brought in as a co-defendant. Whether or not he'll be dismissed is another question. I actually think he will be dismissed in the civil action, in the civil lawsuit, because even though I disagree that the litigation privilege extends to comments and statements and PR statements made prior to litigation, certainly not within anticipation of litigation, allegedly, then I don't think that privilege is unlimited, right? If I go out as an attorney and do things on behalf of my client that are still tortious in nature, I can be held liable for that. I'm not covered by any privilege. So this is a very fact-specific case. It will be determined by the court here shortly, but I actually think that second defendant is much more difficult to put liability on than the Laundries themselves.
Fascinating. All right, Kim, I want to get you involved too, especially because I know you have some thoughts on the Romans 8:38 reference here at the end. I mean,
oh gosh.
I guess, yeah. What is the extended version? The exclamation point. Go ahead. What are your thoughts when you read this letter, Kim?
So the funny thing is, for me, I'm wondering if she uses extended version and blasphemy synonymously. It's a little bit awkward. I think the biggest thing for me with this letter is I'm trying to look at this from the perspective of, if I am in a jury of a civil trial, right? And I'm taking a look at this letter. To me, it doesn't matter whether or not this letter was written before or after Gabby's passing, because what it shows me is there is a level of intensity here with this relationship. It's unhinged. It's not healthy. It is toxic as anything. The line of, if you hate my guts, I will get new guts. If I'm a mother and my child hates me, I'm going to change myself so they do not hate me anymore. And to me, that's like, we all should be in the mindset of, or not, we all shouldn't, but I can't speak for everyone. To me, healthy parenting is not being a friend to your child. It's being a parent. There are going to be points when you're a parent that your kid doesn't like you because you're not being a friend and you don't understand why. So to me, that just shows me that this relationship is not healthy. And then he knows in his mind that if he does the unthinkable, he has people that are going to back him up and do whatever he tells them to do. All it does to me is show that the culture within the Laundrie household is not healthy, and they are capable of anything. All of a sudden, any theories that the Petitos want to put out seem a lot more viable.
Well, the other thing that really weirds me out is it's like she's insanely jealous of Gabby, and like the relationship with Gabby is something that am I the only one getting that vibe? Like there's just there's a level of intensity in that regard too, of like, I get it. Mothers love their sons. It's a different kind of thing even for mothers, but I don't know. Did any of you else get that vibe of just like, there's something extra?
When it was read to members of my family last night, Oedipus was brought up. Freud was brought up. I'm just saying, it's awkward. Yeah. It's awkward.
Well, I mean, she knew this was going to be awkward. This was clearly that this is always, but she's admitted it. Like, this is a really awkward letter. But that's the question. Are they bad parents or are they bad people and actually covered up a murder? That's really what this is about. And I even if she's telling the truth and this was written in some weird, quirky justification, I got to say, it's just unfortunate timing because it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. It looks, and everything you say is extra. You don't seem like good parents. You don't seem like you're actually teaching him how to be a good person. We got to remember, Brian Laundrie was someone who was abusing Gabby. We have footage, we have photo evidence and more of that to prove that this was not just a one case. We have the footage from the pullover. We have, it's disheartening to see that they were living with this girl, their daughter-in-law, and their son was clearly doing things that he shouldn't be doing, and they never defended or tried to protect her. To me, that's another huge problem of this story and for them and their defense of, well, how do you justify it? She lived there with them, right? And then she's missing, and then they don't even seem to care when she was missing. There was so much to this and the Laundrie's reactions that, yeah, it's hard for me to feel any empathy for them now, even though they also lost a son. That's the other thing that's so weird about this that everyone sort of glossed over. They lost their son too, right? Which should factor. But no, I'm still really angry at them for the way they just completely disrespected and ignored and seemed to allow their son to do whatever it took, including murder their daughter-in-law.
But I mean, Andy, when you look at this, part of, I think, where the scriptural part gets me so angry is I almost feel like this is evidence that Roberta will use these almost like biblical righteous justifications to say that doing things like aiding her son in murder is acceptable.
Yep.
It's a whole bunch of twisted. It's a lot of God complex and not healthy. And when you take something like, Romans 8:38 and 39, which I don't want to make this into theology or anything like that, but it's a very intense piece of scripture, and it's in a very cultural sense about the beginnings of the church, about, the relationship between God and the church, and the implications of the spiritual warfare and everything else that surrounds that. It is really, really intense. And that's why I recognized it as soon as I started reading it. I knew exactly what verse it was. And to take it and change it into mother-son relationship, and also in part to justify Brian doing the unthinkable, it's messed up.
You're absolutely right. It's that last part. It's the little parentheses at the bottom. Nothing can separate us. Not hatred, not hunger, not homelessness, not threats, not even sin. Not the thinkable or unthinkable can get between us and and then not time, not miles and miles and miles. Okay, so you're telling me that you drafted this prior to them leaving on this trip, and you were already saying, hey, by the way, if you murder your fiance or do the unthinkable, I'll still love you. Like, what parent says that? Right? That's why I say the timing of this.
Well, I'll correct you. I'll be the one. I would still love my child, but I would hold them accountable, right? That's what I don't see in this note. It's like, it's one thing to love your child no matter what. As a parent, I can get that, but you still need to teach your child to be accountable, right? And that's what I don't see any of in this letter. It's exactly, it's all excuses, and she doesn't want to have consequences for actions. Show me your love and all your actions, what you do. If she had said, listen, I know what you did was wrong. Please fess up. It's important you go to the authorities. No matter what, I will still love you. Like, if it had been that kind of love as a parent, I would be like, okay, I totally get where she's coming from. But she's ignoring the important part, which is you have to go to the authorities. You have to fess up. You have to stop hitting her. All these things that clearly he was doing, she's just put a blind eye to, is how it reads to me. No?
Oh yeah, this would be on a narcissistic parent subreddit somewhere. Like, guaranteed, that is what this reads as, is a classical narcissist who is more concerned about the way that their children perceive them, whether or not they're receiving love, whether or not they have control over their kids, their relationships, their lives, more than holding your children accountable, teaching them to be honest and true and good people, and then loving them the way that they are, regardless of what they do, and saying, look, what you did is not okay. I still love you, but I can't turn a blind eye to what has occurred. And all of this to me is not just indicative that she knew of the murder and that this was drafted post-murder, but also that she likely knew of some of the abuse going on.
Yep.
And said nothing and covered for him and probably blamed Gabby.
Right. 100%. But then you wonder, well, what was going on in the family before, the parents, where are they getting it? I mean, there are clearly some family issues with this family, undoubtedly. But again, what we're now, I want to go back to the case. Now we'll talk more throughout the live and get your thoughts. I see your comments coming in. I see you, Kurt. We're going to bring you. But as I wrap up this sort of main bit, Danny, for your legal, like, how will this affect the case? It sounds like, I mean, I agree. The judge and everybody seems to be leaning to a point of there's enough here to let a jury decide, is where I think it should go at this point. That's what the Petitos want. That's what the Laundries are trying to avoid. Regardless of whether Dirtolino is involved or not, it does seem like there's enough here now, especially with this letter, to at least get that jury trial that they want. Do you think we're going to get that? And then how do you think a jury's going to react to this? Seeing Roberta finally take the stand. We've never heard her speak. Nobody. The Laundries have tried to avoid everybody at all costs. Would this then require them to have to do that? Will that be the turning point, their testimony? What are your thoughts?
So as a non-Florida attorney, I can't speak to whether or not even a jury will see this, because in my jurisdiction, at the end of each complaint, if you want a jury trial, you need to request one. I have not seen a request in their complaint. They've had to amend their complaint multiple times. Now seeing this, though, at least on the IIED, if the judge grants or denies the motion to dismiss this case, given the pleadings as they are right now, and the reason that you want pleadings to be very specific is because of this, because it affects discovery. What are you looking for? What are you digging for? And is there a viable claim or a cause of action for recovery in this case? My response to that is yes, obviously they were harmed. Now, whether or not they were harmed as a result of the actions of Roberta Laundrie and her husband and their attorney is another question. It is going to be hard to draw the line between what it is that the Laundries did and said or didn't do, and how it directly impacted or affected the emotional distress, and whether or not it was the direct or proximate cause of the emotional distress of the Petitos. So them, and then there's a second question, which is they're exercising their rights, or at least their son was exercising his rights. They do not have an obligation to go out there and talk to the media. They don't have an obligation to talk to the Petitos. However, the fact that they were covering for their son as long as they were, again, this seems more criminal to me than it does civil, but let's say it's civil. I would have come in with a wrongful death claim against his estate. I would have come in with quite a few more claims against the estate, against the Laundries. They'll argue, well, we aren't a part of the estate. I would argue that they are. I would have taken it step by step that way, but it sounds like the statute of limitations may have been tolling. And so their attorney said, let's just get a complaint in. Let's just bring a claim anyway. Worst case scenario, we amend our complaint later to try and get all of this in. So your first question was, do I think it will get to a jury? Yes, I do, because I think that the community wants justice. I think that this is a very public case, and I don't think that the judge would want to dismiss this off the cuff. I think the judge at least wants to hear them out, see what other evidence is available and what else comes forward without infringing on the rights of Brian, but Brian is dead. So who's going to assert those rights for him, right? There's a lot of complexities in this civil case. So do I think it will get before a jury? Yeah. Do I think they'll at least get to trial? Probably. Do I think that it's more likely they'll settle outside of court prior to then? Yes, I do. I think the Laundries don't want this going to trial. I think that this letter, or at least the disclosure of this letter, will be enough to force them into settlement negotiations, which it sounds like they've been extremely reluctant to do. It sounds like they've been extremely reluctant to cooperate in any way with either the Petitos, law enforcement, etc. So, I think that the Petitos are going to get some kind of recovery, whether or not it's substantial. They're only asking for $30,000 plus attorney's fees, costs, and pre and post judgment interest. So they're not asking for a lot. But if they win on this claim of IIED, they may potentially be looking at punitive damages, and the jury can then decide how much more they can recover. So it's a tricky case. There's a bunch of attorneys who say there's not the complaint wasn't pled well enough, and I agree. This was not a well pled complaint. The complaint is awful. Okay, it was not drafted well, but they got the basics in there. They have enough to show, look, Brian came back on this date. You retained counsel on this date. The day after he got home is when you signed the retainer, but you went to go see counsel 3 days before Brian even got home. So you had to have known that something was up. And then you went, instead of working with law enforcement and trying to help find this woman, you went on a trip to Fort DeSoto for a week. And then you let your son abscond and self-delete somewhere in the forest and in the woods. And this whole time, mind you, while we were looking for our daughter, you made a public statement saying, I hope that we find her. I hope that she's found. What the hell does that mean? That isn't, I'm sorry, but that's where all of this in context, that one public statement in context, I think is really damaging to the Laundries. And I think that the Petito family may be able to recover, because that is emotionally devastating. When you know that they know something and they're not saying anything, and you already sent them a demand letter, because the Petito family sent a demand letter prior to their public statement saying, please, if you have any decency left, please tell us where our daughter is. Give us something. Please tell us what happened. Something. We are in extreme emotional distress right now. Please help us. So I think that there's a claim here. Whether or not they'll win on that claim, I'm not entirely sure. But do I think it will end up going to trial? Yeah. If not trial, at least settlement.
It's also just so disheartening, because when you go back and I replay the parts of the case, it's like they may never have found Gabby had that video, just not. If we hadn't been all paying attention and then YouTubers weren't doing what they were doing, and Red White Bethune didn't notice the van on that vlog video that they had, that was a game changer. And that was in the middle of nowhere. Like, my God, it might have been months, a year until someone had gone by, and then the remains could have just, we may never have known. And maybe that's what they were hoping, is the vibe I get of they were just trying to play like, oh, did you bury it deep enough? Maybe they'll never find it. And that's what's just so disheartening about this. So yeah, I think that the Petitos definitely have a case here, and I hope they get through it. We got lots more to talk about. Make sure if you haven't already, I'm just taking a clip in this for our main point. If you like Danny, go check her out at Danny on Direct over on YouTube. Make sure to support It's Kim as well. I'm going to get more from her and more from you guys in a second. If you're watching though live, don't go anywhere. If you're watching on the replay, consider becoming a member. You can always watch the full show when we're not live by becoming a member. Pick a tier, hit that join button, and support us.